It's easy to fall in love with the numbers from the NFL Combine, but the perfect fit at edge rusher for the New Orleans Saints has been the same all along. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on our Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to go all in on a late round prospect that I really love as a fit for the New Orleans Saints. We're going to dive into why adding a bunch of playmakers for the Saints in the offensive side of the football just got a lot easier thanks to the NFL Combine. And we're going to start it all off with looking at, in spite of the NFL Combine, why the New Orleans Saints' perfect fit at edge rusher has been the same in the first round all along. We got all that coming up for you today. We appreciate you very much for being an everydayer here on the show and for making us your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more, and it just got a lot easier because if you're a new customer, you'll get $150 in bonus bets by simply winning any $5 bet. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, the perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints at edge rusher, should that be the position they choose to address in the first round, has not changed for me at all. You can flash all the fancy 40-yard dash numbers. You can flash your vertical jumps, all that other stuff. No one is more technically sound. No one is more proficient in the game of pass rushing and counter rushing. No one is a better prototype fit while adding some speed for the New Orleans Saints on the side, off the edge at the same time than UCLA pass rusher Laiatu Latu. Yes, I know everyone's falling in love with Dallas Turner right now because he's so fast, and I completely understand it. But listen, 24 career sacks, 35 and a half career tackles for a loss, and a 26.2 pass rush win rate. Those career sacks, those career tackles for a loss, that pass rush win rate from 2023. Look, the medicals and everything checked out while at Indianapolis. That was the big thing for me. This is a guy that was actually medically retired for a couple of years before transferring from Washington to UCLA, where he didn't miss a single game over the course of the 2 years that he played with the Bruins. And at this point, after finishing up with his measurements and everything, coming in at 6'5", 265 pounds, but adding some speed off the edge, some athleticism off the edge. Did he run a 4.40? No, he ran in the 4.6s, but that's better than fine when it comes to that position. Laiatu Latu to me is probably the perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints in the first round. Look, we can go offensive tackle here. You can look at it from that perspective if you want to when it comes to what the Saints could do. I could have gone that way, but I didn't because it looks like Ryan Ramczyk's going to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. What we figured out over the course of the time in Indianapolis, and as Dennis Allen mentioned in his presser with us, that he had a minor surgery to clean up his knee and that everybody's expected to be ready for training camp with the exception of linebacker Nephi Sewell. So that gives you a very good outlook on Ryan Ramczyk. Trevor Penning is a guy that I think deserves his opportunity at left tackle. He's going to get an opportunity to compete there. Am I against drafting competition for him? Absolutely not. But when you look at where he is and where the Saints are going to start this season, they're probably not going to look at tackle as much of a need as maybe we expected. They're instead going to look at offensive line depth and then maybe start to figure out what's going to go on at left guard. Will that be James Hurst? Will that be Nick Saldiveri? Will they bring Max Garcia back? How will they address that position? Because it doesn't seem that they're in a hurry to move Trevor Penning on the inside. So with all the questions on the offensive line effectively quelled at the moment, and that will only become more satisfied over the course of free agency, edge rusher still seems like the big remaining place to go unless they land themselves a good pass rusher in free agency and maybe land or looking for maybe a possession wide receiver. But don't worry, we're going to take care of that in round 2 while we're looking at some playmakers. So for me, the prevailing need for New Orleans that can easily extend into the draft is that of pass rusher. This is not going to be a team that's going to be taking big swings in day 1 and day 2 of free agency. They're very likely to get more involved in the second phase of it. They'll still be able to get some good players there, but they're going to go mid-tier, quote unquote, contract-wise is what I mean by that. Free agent for the most part, I imagine. And so you're probably not going to be fully satisfied with what you've got at edge rusher and at pass rusher based upon what this team looks like it might do in free agency. So with that being the case, grabbing yourself a young pass rusher, if you are concerned about the medicals, checked out fine at the combine. The Saints would very likely have him in for a visit where they could do their own medical checks as well. I can't imagine this guy at 6'5", 260 plus pounds as one of the most proficient pass rushers and most polished pass rushers in this draft not being on their top 30 visits radar. So with all of that, based on what they saw from him at the combine, saw from him in that potential top 30 visit, what they saw from him at the Senior Bowl, you'd be able to get the medicals and all the answers that you need there. And then when he shows up in New Orleans, he's playing more of a rotational role anyway, but still having a big impact for you as a more consistent, heavily rotated player, right? Utilized quite a bit. And then all of a sudden, your pass rush has its futures, your future edge rushers in Carl Granderson and in Laiatu Latu, assuming that everything goes well. Like, that's a good dice to roll, if you ask me. Now, would I be upset if this, was Dallas Turner? Absolutely not. I just don't know if he's going to be there at 14 at this point. Would I be upset if this was Jared Verse out of Florida State? Absolutely not. But if you want somebody that's got experience, you want somebody that's polished, you want somebody that's got technique, not only as on an initial rush, but also in counter moves and stringing together moves. You want somebody that's not a developmental player that's coming in at the Saints prototype while also adding speed, burst, acceleration, athleticism. Here he is. This is what every Saints fan's been asking for when the Saints go out there and draft pass rushers. Draft the guy that's got the extra moves, that can string pieces together. Check. Draft the guy that's got experience. Check. Draft the guy that doesn't need a ton of development. Check. It's all here, and you get the prototype, but then you get the athleticism, you get the speed, all those other pieces. Clearly, I cannot speak highly enough when it comes to Laiatu Latu, but I truly believe that as of right now we've got a lot more draft process to go. We got free agency to go, all this other stuff. But as of right now, March 4th, on a mock draft Monday, just now following the NFL Combine, I think Laiatu Latu is the perfect fit when it comes to pass rusher in the first round of this year's NFL Draft for the New Orleans Saints. Coming up next, let's flip the script and go to the opposite side of the football. Can the New Orleans Saints add playmakers? We're going to add one from each skill position as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, where you can shoot your shot, especially as the NBA season continues to roll along. The Boston Celtics are on an absolute heater in the Eastern Conference. 3 opponents that they've now beaten by 50 or more points in the NBA. They right now are the heavy favorites when it comes to the Eastern Conference Finals. Good to know, because if you're a new customer heading over to FanDuel, you can get $150 in bonus bets by simply winning any $5 bet, even if it's a heavy favorite like the Boston Celtics are over in the Eastern Conference. So if you want to go and check them out, you can find that and you can get $150 in bonus bets if that bet wins over at FanDuel.com/locked on. You're also going to be able to check out quick bets, same game parlays, live same game parlays as well. So much for you over at FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints want to add some more talent over on the offensive side of the football. I think they've got needs at wide receiver, at tight end, and maybe even could roll the dice again at running back in this year's draft if they want to. So we're going to add one player from each of those 3 positions for the next 3 selections. Appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Make sure you also go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 national sports stream over on YouTube, the first of its kind on YouTube. You want to know what all of our folks who are around in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine have to say about this year's draft class? Well, Locked On Sports Today's 24/7 national sports stream on YouTube is the way to do it. Go and subscribe today. So what we're going to do now is pick 45 in the second round, and we're going to jump to the first 2 of 4 fifth-round picks. Now, remember, I mentioned last week or on Saturday that when we did our mock draft here, our post-combine mock draft, that I wouldn't do any trades. That'll change next week because, I got to do another draft to where we clump together a couple of those compensatory fifths and then try to move up into the fourth, maybe even throw in a future something to try to get into the third. All that. I also think that trading back from 45 is not a bad idea, but I understand the team that I'm talking about here, and I won't go down that road, at least not yet. We will do a trade back mock just to explore the possibilities. It won't be a full 7 round. We'll do like first 2 and see like, okay, if they trade back from 14, if they trade back from 45 kind of a thing. But right now, I'm going to stick and pick at 45 with a guy that I've absolutely loved over the course of this draft process. And in fact, you're going to get 2 names from me here that you've already gotten. So I'm going to spend some more, if you're an everydayer, I'm going to spend some more time on one of these 3 names. But look, everybody's falling in love with Xavier Worthy right now. I got to dig into a little bit more of his tape. But what I've seen so far is that he's more than just a speed guy. I know the 4.21 combine record-breaking 40-yard dash is super exciting, but he's a really good route runner, runs and does a couple of things. I've only watched a couple of his games so far, however, so I'm going to come back around to him because he could potentially be a fit for New Orleans. But I'm looking at a guy that's going to be able to come in and be able to do things from a versatile standpoint. Hopefully the Saints can find themselves a possession receiver in free agency, which then opens you up to be able to say, okay, where can we find a playmaker that can have an impact from a bunch of different places? And that brings me right back to Western Kentucky wide receiver Malachi Corley. Now, Corley did not participate in the NFL Combine, and so maybe drafting him at 45 is a little early, but look, I can tell you just from walking around in Indianapolis, teams love this receiver. 5'11", 215 pounds. He's got the Deebo Samuel tag, 79 receptions last year for 984 yards and 11 receiving touchdowns during that time, and a good portion of that all came from his work after the catch. That's what the New Orleans Saints need, especially running this system, this I'm going to keep calling it the Shanahan-Kubiak system, right? Their version of it. You're going to want those guys you can hit on a 6-yard slant and watch them take it and do something more with it, whether that's getting you 11 yards in total or getting you 60-plus yards in total. You want to have those types of guys. That's what I like about a Malachi Corley. And another guy that could potentially do that for you that absolutely lit up the combine. So this is one to where the numbers did make me go, oh, I got to go look at the tape. I got to go learn more about this guy. But running back out of Louisville, Isaac Guerendo. Goodness gracious. So only 132 total rushes in 2023, 810 yards on those. So really good average there. And despite only having 132 rushes in 2023, 11 of those he housed for a touchdown. The guy's just electrifying. Ran a 4.33 40-yard dash during the combine. That was first in the position group. Added a 41.5-inch vertical leap, again first in the position group. Why is that important? That's important because of his ability to be able to his explosion, right? It's all about the explosiveness. And he added a 10-foot 9-inch broad jump as well, which was second, only because one guy went like 11-2. At that point, but just outstanding. 4.11 yards per contact yards after contact per attempt. So was constantly being able to break through tackles and pick up additional yards. Remember, that was a big thing that we just broke down late last week when we were talking about why Alvin Kamara being in the future plans is such a smart thing for the New Orleans Saints. He didn't get a lot of yards after contact last year, but in this new offense, you have to expect him to get out in space a lot more. And so that first contact will be coming less against defensive linemen, more against linebackers, safeties, and cornerbacks. That works really well for a guy that's got a track record like Isaac Guerendo as well. So just something to keep an eye out on as a potential running back to go with. I've been, I've been throwing Tyrone Tracy from Purdue into my mock drafts a ton because of his versatility. But because of the versatility of Malachi Corley and me grabbing him in the second round, I got to, not necessarily have to follow that same pattern that I've been following. And so this was an easier one for me to be able to kind of look at and say, okay, who's the guy that really impressed during the NFL Combine? And Garindo is 100% the guy that impressed during the NFL Combine. By the way, just height and weight wise, he checked in at 6 foot, 221 pounds. So he ran that 4.33, but he didn't run that 4.33 light. He ran that 4.33 at 221 pounds. So he's got the breakaway speed for you. He's got some actual size to him as well. And look, he hasn't been asked to catch passes out of the backfield a ton, just over 20 last year, but that's kind of the story for the majority of these running backs in this year's class. So that's not something you have to worry about maybe taking a little bit of a loss on, considering all of the other stuff that you get with a Garindo. All right, let's go to, I did a whole first segment about him yesterday. The next selection here in the 5th round is, of course, tight end out of Penn State, Theo Johnson. Look, if you roll your eyes, if you go, oh, this guy again, I completely get it. I understand. I talk about him, I feel like, every single day. Just call him my draft crush for this year's class. But 77 career receptions, 938 career receiving yards, and 12 career receiving touchdowns. All that really tells you is that he was massively underutilized in Penn State's offense. He should have gotten so much more attention, so much more love than he did over in Penn State. And if you watched him during the Combine, it wasn't just how well he tested, running in the 4, 5, 8 area, number 2 when it came to the vertical leap, did a lot of really good things in this class. However, it was also just watching him go through the drills. He looked fluid. He was the first one to really get it on the sled, all these other things. So I really like what we saw from Theo Johnson during the NFL Combine. I don't think that he did enough to move himself to a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick unless some team falls in love with him. You know the rule in the NFL draft, you only need one. But I do think that he did enough for himself to be a guy that the New Orleans Saints should want, who right now only have those 2 tight ends that are sitting on the roster in Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau. Go and get you a young guy that's ready to contribute. Not a yards after catch tight end, but that's okay. You got that in Juwan Johnson. Go and get you a guy that can be a threat at 6'6", 259 pounds in the red zone, because you're very likely losing that when it comes to Jimmy Graham's future. All right, coming up next, we're going to jump all the way to the very last selection for the Saints in round 6, pick 200. And I'm going to tell you why one safety is a perfect fit late in the draft, and then we'll go back and finish it up. Yeah, I like this guy that much. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp Therapy Online has been awesome to me. It can be awesome for you too. Think about it. One of the questions that I love asking is, if you had an extra hour in your day, how would you spend it? We all wish for more time, but what would we actually do with it? For what? Like, if time was unlimited, how would you use it? So you try to squeeze in something special. Would you try to put in more work? I know that's probably what I would do. That's one of the reasons why I might be in therapy. It's an opportunity to really figure out what you care about and make it a priority. So go and check them out today. Like, if you've been thinking about therapy, seriously, give BetterHelp a try. It's been massively helpful for me. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, designed to be flexible, suited to your schedule. The online portion of it helps with that a ton. Get a licensed therapist suited to you based on a questionnaire. If it doesn't work, you can swap that therapist out, change different therapists without any kind of additional charge. Learn what it is that makes you happy today with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon for 10% off of your first month. It's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. We are continuing on and wrapping up this Mock Draft Monday post-Combine mock draft here. And I want to actually jump all the way to the 7th round because there's a safety that I am just absolutely in love with as a fit for the New Orleans Saints now that they're planning to move on, as we already expected, from Marcus May. We appreciate you very much for being here. Don't forget, we are your team every day. So we're going to come back tomorrow with more of those sort of saints and sinners from the NFL Combine, who now feels like a better fit that wasn't in the conversation for the New Orleans Saints, and who in the conversation for the New Orleans Saints maybe doesn't feel like much of a fit anymore based on their Combine performances. But for the most part, a lot of things stayed steady here. And one of the things that absolutely stayed steady for me was my love for Trey Taylor, the safety out of the Air Force. Let me tell you a little bit about Trey Taylor. I'm jumping all the way to the last selection, right? We're at pick 200 right now. We'll go back and finish up the rest. But Trey Taylor, let's just really break him down. I mentioned him in yesterday's episode, or in Saturday's episode, about, him and Mark Perry both being guys who just pay attention to as potential safety fits late in the draft. 6th round here. He had 3 interceptions in 2023. A passer rating allowed of just 50.9 in 2023, as well as 205 career tackles. But he is much more than just what his stats show. This is a guy that showed up at the Air Force Academy and was working, to get on the field and be a football player for them. And for the first 2 years, didn't start. So what did he do over the course of that time? Well, he bulked up. First of all, he got himself up from 185 to 205. He's now weighing in, thanks to the Shrine Bowl measurements, at 6 foot, 213 pounds. So he dedicated that time to add more pounds to his frame, get a little bit bigger. Went on in 2023 to add those stats that we just discussed, but he also only allowed 1 touchdown and scored a touchdown himself, by the way. And that was in 393 total coverage snaps last year in 2023. Became Air Force's first ever Jim Thorpe Award winner, which is the position award given to the best defensive back in the country. He's actually only the 2nd player in Air Force history to receive any position award like that. He was also 4th on the team in 2023 with 74 tackles, led the team in tackles in 2022 with 69. That was after sitting about for the first 2 years and waiting for his opportunity. He's also football bloodline, the cousin of Ed Reed, former running back. When I think that the former running back thing goes a long way, you understand angles, how to pursue ball carriers, all these other things. He is outstanding and proved it even more at that East-West Shrine Bowl over in Frisco, Texas. He's outstanding when it comes to covering those tight ends, covering those running backs. So with the New Orleans Saints moving on, or being expected, let's say, to move on from Marcus May, they're moving on from Marcus May. There's an expectation that that's a box safety role that they'll look to fill. Now, the good news for New Orleans is that Tyrann Mathieu can do it all. So you can have Tyrann Mathieu play closer to the line of scrimmage. You can have Jordan Howden play further away from the line of scrimmage, and then you're pretty Gucci. You could bring back a Jonathan Abram to hold down the box safety role if you want to play it a little bit more solidly, to where this is one guy's responsibility, dropping back in coverage is another guy's responsibility, and then dime packages get a little bit more creative and things like that. But if you want to draft somebody to just kind of sit back in the shadows, probably be a fantastic gunner for you. Be a great special teamer for you as well. We're talking 6th round pick here toward the end of the draft. A guy like Trey Taylor, first ever Jim Thorpe Award winner from Air Force, could be a really, really solid selection for you to draft and then develop in the background. Okay, I wanted to get my big spiel about Trey Taylor out of the way, and then I can take my time going through the remaining 3 selections for this mock draft. So we had just finished up with Theo Johnson, who I had at 167, the first compensatory selection in the 5th round. Now, and really for me, honestly, Isaac Guerendo as well as Theo Johnson, you might need to flip-flop them a little bit to where Theo Johnson's at 149 and then Guerendo's at 167, whatever. Doesn't matter. Let's go 2 picks later. 5th round, 2nd compensatory selection, pick 169. We're going with somebody I've never selected before, but really like. It's UNC, the Tar Heels, linebacker Cedric Gray. Cedric Gray, 5 career interceptions, 29 career tackles for a loss, 8.5 career sacks as well. So you could see a little bit of everything there. A little bit of coverage, a little bit of run, a little bit of pursuing the passer. You like that ability to be able to do a little bit of everything. Could be a guy that comes into the NFL, starts learning a little bit more of the strong side, where the Saints might have a vacancy depending upon what happens with Zach Bond. But he could be a weak side linebacker for you as well. You could drop back into coverage, but he's a little bit undersized, 6'1", 234 pounds. This is just something the Saints are going to have to deal with, if we're being honest. Linebackers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as you're entering the NFL, and you're just going to have to be okay with that over time. This is a guy with good range, who could be a good downhill player, a little bit of a thumper, tackles well. Takes angles well and fits well in the run game. Missed tackles are a little bit high for me, but does a very good job at just kind of dipping under blockers, using his ability to be disruptive. So Like I mentioned, he's got those, 5 career interceptions, 29 tackles for loss, and 8.5 career sacks. Do want to mention that 5 of those sacks were last year. He's also got 13 career passes defended as well. So again, good all-around guy for you to look at late in the draft if you're looking for a little bit more safety depth, linebacker depth, which the New Orleans Saints absolutely should be. All right, speaking of depth, looking for depth on the offensive line. You love versatile players. Let's go back to North Dakota State University offensive lineman Jaylen Sundell. And we got to call him an offensive lineman because only 2 career sacks allowed, only 18 career pressures allowed. Played at left tackle for North Dakota State University, played at center for North Dakota State, played at right guard for North Dakota State. So he's got tackle, guard, center versatility. It's the New Orleans Saints special, everybody. And he comes in at a decent size, 6'5", 301 pounds. So grabbing him with that final 5th round selection, that final compensatory selection, just a good opportunity to build out some depth there. And then to wrap us up, kind of round 6, the pick that the Saints got from the Philadelphia Eagles, pick 192. We're going defensive tackle Marcus Harris out of Auburn. 11 career sacks from the inside. 31, that's his career sacks. If you're watching on video, it should be 31 tackles for a loss. My apologies. As well as a 10.2% run stop rate. So again, very active, disruptive playmaker in the middle of your defense. Would be a very good rotational 3-tech guy for you to add to the mix here. I think you still want to re-sign Malcolm Roach so that you have some, good size there coming back to the interior. This guy coming in at 6'2", 286 pounds. Small size, but he's really, really disruptive. He's going to be kind of one of those one-gap scheme guys, so he can make a lot of sense for you. So just as a quick recap, round 1, pick 14, UCLA edge rusher, Laiatu Latu. Pick 2, round 2, pick 45. I'm going to get my stuff together. I promise y'all that. Western Kentucky wide receiver, Malachi Corley. Round 5, pick 149. We went let's go Penn State Theo Johnson there. That's probably the right spot for him a little bit earlier. Sticking in round 5, the 3 compensatory picks. Louisville running back Isaac Guerendo, as well as UNC linebacker Cedric Gray out of North Carolina, and then North Dakota State University offensive lineman Jaylen Sundell. Then we go Auburn defensive tackle Marcus Harris in the 6th round, and then we wrap up the draft at the end of the 6th round with Air Force safety Trey Taylor. So that's it. That's our mock draft. Go ahead and shred it up. Tell me how much you hate it. I love it. I love all of it. And of course, I love seeing all of your mock drafts as well. So don't forget to send me yours. We appreciate you very much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day for your second listen. Make sure you go and check out Locked On LSU with Caroline Fenton. How did those LSU Tigers do at the Combine? She's got the breakdown for you. And of course, you can find more over with Locked On Pels and Jake Madison. Thank you very much as always, making Locked On Saints a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson. NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.